You hear the word environment thrown around all the time, right? But if you had to really break it down, like to its most basic parts, could you? What are the actual building blocks of our world? Well, today we're going to do just that, piece by piece.
So let's start with that big question. It seems simple enough, but the answer is, well, it's everything. It's incredibly complex. So how do we even begin to organize all of that? Luckily, science gives us a really smart way to think about it.
Okay, so here's the textbook definition. At its core, it's actually pretty straightforward. Everything, and I mean everything, falls into one of two buckets. You have biotic things. That's all the living stuff, from the tiniest bacteria to the biggest whale. And then you have abiotic things, the non-living stuff like rocks, air, and water. The real magic happens where those two meet and interact.
To really make sense of this whole thing, we can group everything into three fundamental pillars. Think of this as our guide, our map, to understanding how our world actually functions.
So here they are, our three pillars. First, you've got the abiotic components. That's the non-living stage, the rocks, the water, the air. Second, you have the biotic components. Those are all the living players on that stage. And then there's the third, absolutely crucial piece, energy. That's the power source, the force that makes the whole show run.
And what's so cool about this diagram is that it shows you none of these parts exist on their own. Just look at all those arrows going back and forth. Living things, and that includes us, are in this constant dance with the non-living world. Everything is connected to everything else.
All right, so let's dig into that first component, the abiotic, or non-living world. A really great way to picture this is as the physical stage where the entire drama of life plays out.
Now, this abiotic stage isn't just one big, flat thing. It's actually made up of these distinct layers, or spheres. You've got the solid ground, all the water on the planet, and the very air we breathe. And together, these non-living spheres create the foundation for every single living thing. Let's get a little more specific. The lithosphere, that's the solid ground, the crust. The hydrosphere is all the water, and it's just wild to think that 97% of it is in our oceans. The atmosphere is that super thin, vital blanket of gas that protects us, thanks to things like the ozone layer. And then there's the biosphere. It's not really a separate sphere, but something way more interesting.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? It shows you just how incredibly precious and fragile that biosphere is. It's not some huge separate layer. It's this incredibly thin zone on top of the other spheres where all life exists. Everything we know, every living thing, is crammed into a layer no thicker than the skin of an apple. Kind of puts things in perspective.
So if the abiotic world is our stage, then who are the players? Well, that brings us to the biotic components. We're talking about all the living things, and the way they interact with each other creates this amazingly complex web of life.
And these relationships really boil down to two main types. You have intraspecific, which is when members of the same species interact. Think of a wolf pack or an ant colony. Then you have interspecific relationships, and this is when things get really diverse, because it's all about how different species interact with each other.
And here are two really cool beneficial types. With commensalism, one organism gets a benefit, and the other one, well, it's not helped or hurt. It's totally neutral, like algae just hitching a ride on a turtle's shell. But then you have mutualism, which is a true win-win, like the bacteria on plant roots. They get a home, and in return, they help the plant get nutrients. It's just perfect teamwork.
Okay, so we've got our stage, and we've got our players. But what makes the whole show go? What makes anything happen at all? That takes us to our third and final piece of the puzzle, energy. It is the engine behind absolutely everything in the environment.
And where we get our energy falls into two big buckets. On one side, you have the conventional sources, or non-renewable. Think of things like coal and oil. They're finite. Once you use them, they're pretty much gone for good. On the other side, you have the non-conventional, or renewable sources. These are things like solar and wind that nature just keeps on giving.
And this is a perfect way to see that difference. The conventional stuff is what we have to dig up and pull out of the Earth's crust. It's a one-and-done deal. But the non-conventional sources, we're just tapping into natural processes that are happening anyway. The sun is going to shine, the wind is going to blow. And you can probably guess that the choice between these two has a massive impact on the whole system we've just been talking about. So, we've broken down the environment into its three core pieces: the non-living stage, the living players, and the energy that powers it all. Okay, great. But what's the big takeaway here? Why does any of this actually matter?
Well, here's why it all matters.
When you understand that the biotic world, that's us, is totally dependent on the health of the abiotic spheres, and that our energy choices mess with that balance, that's when you can finally see the real impact of our actions. This knowledge is step one to figuring out how to live more sustainably and protect that thin, fragile little biosphere we all call home.
Now, it's really easy to feel overwhelmed by all the challenges we face, but honestly, understanding the system is empowering, and it leads to a really hopeful idea. As this quote says, we have better tools and more knowledge than anyone who came before us. We are uniquely equipped to figure this out.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought. The next time you step outside, I want you to look around with this new framework in mind. Can you see the abiotic stage, the biotic players, the flow of energy? What kind of connections can you spot now, right in your own backyard? Thanks for diving into this with me.